Imagine walking into your local grocery store tomorrow and seeing a simple loaf of bread priced at $50. Not a specialty artisan loaf, not organic, just regular white bread, $50. You'd think it was a mistake, right? But what if I told you this isn't science fiction? What if I told you that based on current economic trends, we might be standing at the edge of a hyperinflation crisis that could make this nightmare a reality in 2026? Stay with me, because what I'm about to share could change how you prepare for your financial future. Welcome to George Vance Live, where we cut through the noise and give you the real story behind the headlines. If this is your first time here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we're diving deep into economic truths that mainstream media won't tell you. Let's start with something critical. Hyperinflation isn't just high inflation. Regular inflation is when prices go up maybe 3, 4, even 7% a year. That's annoying, but manageable. Hyperinflation is a completely different beast. We're talking about prices doubling every few weeks, or even days. It's when your money becomes worthless so fast that you literally need a wheelbarrow of cash to buy groceries. This has happened before in history, and the patterns we're seeing right now are eerily similar. Think I'm exaggerating? Let me take you back to Germany in 1923. The Weimar Republic experienced one of history's most devastating hyperinflation events. At the peak, prices were doubling every 3.7 days. A loaf of bread that cost 250 marks in January 1923 cost 200 billion marks by November. People were burning money in their fireplaces because it was cheaper than buying firewood. Workers were paid twice a day because by evening, their morning wages would be worthless. Families lost their entire life savings overnight. The middle class was completely wiped out. Or look at Zimbabwe in 2008. The inflation rate reached 79.6 billion%. Yes, billion with a B. They printed a $100 trillion bill that couldn't buy you a bus ticket. People abandoned their currency entirely and started using US dollars and South African rand just to survive. More recently, Venezuela saw inflation rates exceed 1 million%. A cup of coffee that cost a few bolivars in 2012 cost millions by 2018. Families were eating from garbage cans. People lost dozens of pounds because they couldn't afford food. This is what hyperinflation does to a society. Now here's where it gets personal for us. The United States is showing warning signs that we haven't seen since the 1970s, and some of these indicators are even worse than what we saw back then. Let me walk you through exactly what's happening right now in our economy. First, let's talk about money printing. Since 2020, the Federal Reserve has created more money than in the entire previous decade combined. The M2 money supply, which is basically all the money in circulation plus savings accounts, increased by over 40% in just 2 years. To put that in perspective, it took nearly a century to create the amount of money we printed in just 24 months. Every single time a government has rapidly expanded its money supply like this throughout history, inflation has followed. It's not a theory, it's a pattern as reliable as gravity. And here's what makes this even more dangerous. Our national debt just crossed $35 trillion. That's trillion with a T. To pay the interest on that debt alone, we now spend more than we do on national defense. Think about that for a second. We're paying more just to service our debt than we spend protecting the entire country. And how do governments typically deal with massive debt they can't repay? They print more money. It's the oldest trick in the book, and it's exactly what leads to hyperinflation. But wait, you might be thinking, we have the Federal Reserve. They control inflation, right? They raise interest rates and everything gets better. Well, here's the problem. The Fed is caught in what economists call a debt trap. Yes, they've raised interest rates to try to combat inflation, but every time they do, it makes our debt problem worse because we have to pay higher and face this choice. They almost always choose inflation over default. Let me give you a real-world example of how this affects you right now. In 2019, the average family spent about $650 a month on groceries. Today, that same family is spending over $900 for essentially the same items. Your rent or mortgage payment is eating up a bigger chunk of your paycheck. Gas prices have been on a roller coaster. Healthcare costs are skyrocketing. Your dollar is buying less and less every single month. Now imagine this trend not just continuing, but accelerating. That's the hyperinflation scenario. Here's something most people don't realize. Hyperinflation doesn't happen overnight. It builds slowly, then accelerates rapidly. Right now, we're in what I call the slow build phase. You're feeling the pain at the grocery store and the gas pump, but life is still relatively normal. But there's a tipping point. Once people lose confidence in the currency, once they start believing their money will be worth less tomorrow than today, everything changes. People start spending money as fast as they get it because holding on to it means losing value. Businesses start raising prices daily instead of yearly. Workers demand to be paid daily instead of weekly. This creates a self-reinforcing cycle that's almost impossible to stop. The triggers for hyperinflation in 2026 are lining up like dominoes. We've got the massive money printing, We've got the unsustainable debt. We've got supply chain issues that haven't fully resolved from the pandemic. We've got geopolitical tensions affecting global trade. We've got an aging population putting pressure on Social Security and Medicare. And we've got a political system that seems incapable of making the hard choices needed to fix these problems. Each one of these factors alone would be concerning. Together, they create a perfect storm. Let me paint you a picture of what daily life could look like if we hit hyperinflation in 2026. You wake up and check the news. The dollar has lost another 15% of its value overnight against foreign currencies. You head to the grocery store and the prices have changed since yesterday. That $50 loaf of bread, it's real. Milk is $30 a gallon. A dozen eggs costs $40. You pull out your credit card, but many stores have stopped accepting them because the value changes too fast. They want cash, or better yet, they want alternative forms of payment. Your employer calls an emergency meeting. They're switching to daily pay because weekly paychecks lose too much value. Your rent just got raised for the third time this month. Your landlord insists on being paid in gold or cryptocurrency because dollars are becoming worthless. The gas station down the street has a line around the block because people heard prices are going up again at noon. Your retirement account? The number might look bigger, but it buys less than half of what it did 6 months ago. This isn't fear-mongering. This is exactly what happened in every hyperinflation event in history. The question isn't whether it can happen here. History proves it can happen anywhere. The question is whether we're willing to see the warning signs and prepare. So what can you actually do to protect yourself? First, understand that traditional savings accounts become death traps during hyperinflation. If your money is sitting in a bank earning 1% interest while inflation is running at 50 or 100%, you're losing massive amounts of purchasing power every single day. You need to think differently about where you store your wealth. Hard assets become critical. I'm talking about things that have intrinsic value regardless of what happens to paper currency. Real estate, if you can afford it, tends to hold value because people always need places to live. But be careful with mortgage debt in a hyperinflation scenario because while your debt becomes easier to pay off in nominal terms, if your income doesn't keep pace with inflation, you could still struggle. Precious metals like gold and silver have been stores of value for thousands of years. They can't be printed into existence like paper money. During Weimar Germany, people who had gold survived. Those who had only paper marks lost everything. Stockpile essential goods now while prices are still relatively stable. Non-perishable food, medical supplies, basic household items. These become incredibly valuable during hyperinflation. In Venezuela, people traded toilet paper like it was gold because you couldn't buy it in stores. Think about what you and your family absolutely need to survive and function, and build up a reserve. Diversify your income streams. If you're dependent on a single paycheck, you're vulnerable. Find ways to create additional revenue. Learn skills that will be valuable in any economic environment. Plumbers, electricians, mechanics, people who can fix things and provide essential services, they do relatively well even during economic chaos because their skills remain in demand. Consider cryptocurrency, but understand the risks. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies were literally designed for scenarios like this. They can't be inflated by government printing presses. But they're also volatile and relatively new. Don't put everything into crypto, but having some exposure might make sense as part of a diversified strategy. During hyperinflation in countries like Venezuela and Argentina, many people turn to cryptocurrency as a way to preserve their wealth. Build community connections. This might sound soft, but during economic crises, your network becomes your net worth. People who can barter services, share resources, and support each other get through tough times better than those trying to go it alone. Start building those relationships now. Here's something else to consider. Look at what wealthy people and institutions are doing, not what they're saying. Central banks around the world have been buying gold at record rates. Billionaires are investing in farmland, real estate, and tangible assets. Big institutions are moving money out of long-term bonds and into inflation-protected securities. They see the same warning signs we're talking about, and they're preparing. You should too. The political reality is that no politician wants to be the one who crashes the economy by making hard choices. It's always easier to print more money and kick the can down the road. The problem is, we're running out of road. The decisions made in Washington over the next 12 months will likely determine whether we experience manageable inflation or spiral into hyperinflation. And based on historical patterns, governments almost always choose the path of least political resistance, even when it leads to economic disaster. I want to be clear about something. I'm not saying hyperinflation is guaranteed to happen in 2026. What I am saying is that the conditions are more favorable for it now than at any point in modern American history. The math doesn't lie. You can't print 40% more money without consequences. You can't accumulate $35 trillion in debt without a day of reckoning. You can't ignore supply and demand fundamentals and expect different results. Some economists will tell you this is all overblown. They'll point to the Fed's tools and say everything is under control. But these are often the same experts who didn't see the 2008 financial crisis coming. The same ones who said inflation was transitory in 2021. The same ones who have been consistently wrong about major economic turning points. I'm not asking you to panic. I'm asking you to prepare. Think about it this way. If I'm wrong and hyperinflation doesn't happen, what have you lost by preparing? You've got some extra food in your pantry. You've diversified your assets. You've built stronger community connections. You've learned new skills. None of that hurts you. But if I'm right and you haven't prepared, the consequences could be devastating for you and your family. That $50 loaf of bread becomes your reality and you're caught completely off guard. The time to prepare is before the crisis, not during it. Once hyperinflation starts accelerating, it's too late. The stores are empty. Asset prices have already exploded. Everyone is trying to do the same thing at the same time. You want to be ahead of the curve, not chasing it. Here's my challenge to you. Take this seriously, but don't let it paralyze you with fear. Start taking concrete steps today. Open a precious metals account and buy some gold or silver, even if it's just a small amount. Stock up on 3 months of non-perishable food. Pay down high-interest debt. Learn a new practical skill. Talk to your family about financial preparedness. Each small step makes you more resilient. And please share this information. The more people who understand what's happening, the better chance we have of either preventing this crisis or weathering it together. Send this video to friends and family. Post it on your social media. Leave a comment below sharing what steps you're taking to prepare. This isn't just about individual survival, it's about community resilience. Before we wrap up, I want to emphasize one more time that knowledge is power. Subscribe to George Vance Live if you haven't already, because we're going to keep tracking these economic indicators and giving you real-time updates on what's happening. Turn on those notifications so you don't miss critical information that could affect your financial future. The patterns are clear. The warning signs are flashing. History is giving us a roadmap of exactly what happens when governments make the same mistakes we're making now. The question is whether we're paying attention. I believe in American resilience. I believe we can get through whatever comes. But that requires facing reality head-on and preparing accordingly. That $50 loaf of bread might seem impossible today, but so did gas at $5 a gallon before it happened. So did inflation hitting 9% before we saw it. So did every crisis before it actually hit. Don't let normalcy bias blind you to what's possible. The best time to prepare was yesterday. The second best time is right now. Thank you for watching George Vance Live. If you found this valuable, smash that like button and share this video with everyone you know. Drop a comment telling me what you think and what you're doing to prepare. Are we heading for hyperinflation, or will we pull back from the brink? I want to hear your perspective. Until next time, stay informed, stay prepared, and stay resilient. This is George Vance, signing off.